Welcome Home, a podcast for veterans, about veterans by veterans, is a project of Willing Warriors and the Warrior Retreat at Bull Run.
Good morning. I'm your host, Larry Ziliaks, Director of Culinary Services here at the Warrior Retreat at Bull Run. And this week, our guest is Evan Farley. He's the Northern Virginia Metro Field Operations Coordinator, quite a lot, for Team Rubicon, one of my all-time favorite nonprofit organizations in the world. I have watched Team Rubicon and everything they do. I follow them on all the social media. I'm probably on a newsletter. Since its inception, I have really just thought this is one of the most creative nonprofits, taking resources that were out there and oftentimes not doing what they could and putting it into a package that's deliverable to emergency scenes and providing help that's just unrivaled really anywhere in the world. So Evan, thank you for sitting down with us and coming out for this.
Yeah, thank you for the invite. It sounds like you can, I can be interviewing you about your knowledge of Team Rubicon.
No, I mean, I have been a big fan because the concept is just really something else. I thought when I first heard about this and using veterans and putting them to work doing disaster recovery work, you know, there's really no better crowd suited for that. I mean, they have skills. They're used to austere environments. They don't need a Holiday Inn to go volunteer to do something. And they're willing to help. And let me tell you something. I have seen on more than one occasion where a natural disaster has struck, and including in other parts of the world, and Team Rubicon gray shirts, those boots have been on the ground before FEMA, before anybody else. So I want to commend you guys for that and ask you to sort of start with giving us a little background on how the organization got going.
Sure. It was, its genesis was in 2010 with the earthquake in Haiti. Jake Wood, the founder and the first CEO, and a group of veterans and first responders went down to Haiti to sort of provide medical support as they could. And, you know, that gave them the spark, the idea that, hey, we really need something like this that can help out domestically and to grow an organization, which eventually became Team Rubicon. You know, it started from obviously modest means. It was 8 people responding in Haiti to an earthquake that size. To these days, I think we're north of 200,000 volunteers. Mm-hmm. As you said, you mentioned gray shirts. That's what we call our volunteers. We wear a gray shirt. Mm-hmm. I think the second operation they did, which I can't recall where in the Caribbean it was, they tried to stock up on T-shirts, and the only ones that were available were just some gray shirts they found wherever it was, and that became the uniform, and that became, again, the moniker we use to this day. And you're right, you know, obviously the veteran-focused part of our legacy is extremely important, and we are veteran-led. But, you know, I want to give a bit of a shout-out, too, to the fact that we've got probably at this point almost 50-50 veterans as part of the organization and what we call kick-ass civilians. People who just are attracted to the mission. They might have an emergency management background, might have been in police or something of that nature, or just somebody who, I meet them every week. Hey, I just Googled, you know, emergency response, volunteering, this, that, and the other, found your organization, watched a video, thought it looked great, and here I am today. Last week we did a stream cleanup. We might be doing, in terms of local operations, helping out various food banks, things of that nature. So we both do what you mentioned, sort of, you know, go to Haiti. We've got teams in Jamaica right now. We've got teams in Alaska right now. And we also just have across the nation weekend service projects, because it's important to keep our folks engaged in their communities, because not all of us can just jump on a plane, go to Florida for 1 week and sort of muck out houses that have been impacted, you know, by a flood or a hurricane.
Yeah. Tell us, how does somebody get involved with Team Rubicon if they want to help out?
Mm-hmm. Well, if looking to help out, you know, personally, physically, and we go to, you know, teamrubicon.org and sign up. It's very easy to volunteer. You know, you'll get asked some basic questions. It's like signing up for any number of things. Mm-hmm. With one caveat, though, that if you intend to deploy with us, you're going to go to operations somewhere, you have to have a background check, and it costs usually about $25 or so. And that's just to make sure we understand who we're sleeping with in that gymnasium
Mm-hmm.
on that cot donated by the Red Cross.
Mm-hmm.
Because again, as you mentioned a little bit earlier, we do tend to be in austere environments. There's no Holiday Inns available. You're going to be, you're going to be doing things that it might be similar to what you were doing when you got dumped in the desert
Mm-hmm.
at some point and lived in a tent and
Mm-hmm.
went to a chow hall, et cetera, et cetera. So
If you were lucky and you had that stuff.
that's if you were lucky, right?
Nice.
Yes.
So for yourself,
Mhm.
okay, your prior service Navy.
Yes.
The question I always ask is, why would you join the Navy instead of the Air Force?
Funny story about that one. I had actually, I went through ROTC at University of Notre Dame, and I had offers from both the Air Force and Navy for ROTC. And I wanted to fly at that point when my eyes were good, and they're not anymore. So the Air Force requirement was at that point, at least, they're like, no, actually, we don't really do a lot of pilot sessions from ROTC, and you have to have these majors. If you don't do these majors, you cannot get a scholarship. The Navy was, yeah, we get pilots from all over the place. Most of our pilots are history majors. Try engineering. If it doesn't work out, that's okay. I went, okay, Navy's for me. And that's how I went to Navy instead of the Air Force.
And you retired as a commander?
Yes, commander, yes.
Wow. How long were you in?
22 years.
Wow. When did you enlist?
I graduated from Notre Dame in 87, so that was when I was commissioned.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Mm-hmm.
What was your best assignment?
Well, I had one shipboard assignment, USS Ferris, which is a frigate out of Norfolk. It is now either Razor Blades or maybe it's still floating somewhere. It was sold to a different Navy. But I spent about 6 years active duty and the rest of my 22 years in the reserves. Probably the reserve assignment I loved the most was I was a commanding officer of a CB detachment in Pittsburgh, amphibious construction battalions. And they're the folks who do ship-to-shore movements, build all these interesting structures to get stores offloaded and get them to the folks who need them on dry land. And it was just a blast. We had so much fun coming in there, playing CB. I'd never had, small arms training, doing field exercises, qualifying and all sorts of interesting things. And it was a blast. And if actually later in my career, when I was a commander, I got to go out to the West Coast, to the West Coast unit, and then be in charge of all 10 battalions west of the Mississippi. So being on the water, doing CB stuff, it was a blast.
Oh. And 22 years, that's an odd number. You see a lot of people, I'm doing my 20, getting my pension, I'm getting out. Or I'm going to stay and try to build up as much as I can so that, I'm going to get more in retirement. But 22 years, what was the decision process like there?
It was two things. One of which was I had a 3-year tour with the reserves that ended at that point. And as a naval reservist, as above the rank of 04, you go through boards every time you get into assignment. So my assignment was up, and also at that point, I had from my last year in the reserves was my first year working a really difficult job at FEMA, and there was no way I could devote the time I needed to the FEMA job and give the Navy Reserves the time and effort that it needed. And I was like, okay, it's just time to sort of pass the hat to the next generation, and I got to go do my FEMA job.
Yeah. Wow. What was transition like for you?
It was not that hard from this perspective. Being a reservist, you're transitioning once a month in some ways.
Yeah.
I mean, I did get deployed for 10 months after, for the Iraq War in 2003, and that was an interesting transition. But just sort of the leaving the reserves, it left a little bit of a hole there. Yes, a service hole. But again, being a reservist and again, transitioning, it seems every month I'm throwing on some cabbies, zipping out to the West Coast or to Pittsburgh or wherever I was at that point, didn't make that much of a transition. I think it would have been much more of an interesting and a difficult transition just coming off of maybe 20 years of active duty and then just kind of wondering like, okay, what do I do next? It was an interesting transition though when I spent 3 years again on sea duty in a very complicated and taxing job. And the day you step off that ship and that's not your responsibility anymore was quite the transition. I almost didn't know what to do at that point. Like, there was so much put upon you and then you get relieved of that. And that sort of it was just a very weird transition. Coming back from deployment, if we want to continue in this vein, was a weird transition because if you've been deployed over to the Middle East, you're in the middle of that, you're in Iraq or whatever it might be, and it's a very tense situation no matter what you're doing. And then to come back, fly back overseas, get dropped off, and then to be in the middle of a soccer field a day later when you've been in, Baghdad a month before or whatever, looking on, rooftops and whatever it might be was a very, very weird transition. It took any number of months to sort of almost like spin down from being in that environment and to relax and to not be constantly alert and to not feel like your brain is analyzing everywhere you're going and everywhere you're looking. So that was definitely the most difficult transition.
So that's a pretty common thing that we hear because, in World War II, when the war was over, guys came back from Europe on Liberty ships. And that was a month or more that they decompressed. Now you get on a plane and 8 hours later, you're in the middle of it.
Yeah, I was in BWI greeting my family.
Yeah. And so there's no time to decompress.
Right.
You're just kind of thrown into it. So did you make a VA claim for anything?
No.
Okay. Maybe you should.
Maybe. I need to do the PACT Act screening. I need to do that.
Hearing. Yeah. Do you need hearing aids?
No.
You will.
Okay.
Especially, I can't believe that because you had to have been around really heavy equipment.
Yeah, a little bit, but probably more on the machinery side in the Navy. I was in engineering for all 3 years.
Yeah.
And you really got to watch it and really concentrate on hearing protection and things like that.
Yeah. Okay. Listeners, I want you to visit the webpage. It's teamrubiconusa.org. Check it out and look at everything they got going. And if you want to volunteer, reach out. And, giving back and volunteering really good for you. It really is, especially when you're deployed or you're sent to help people that desperately need help, whether it's in the mountains of North Carolina, in Florida after a hurricane, forest fires in the West. These are people that are really hurting. And when you go and help them, you think to yourself, well, that wasn't a big deal. I just showed up and I shoveled out some mud or I cut out some wall board and, try to get mold out of a house and you put in the 8 hours, you put in a long day. So, okay. But to the people that you're there helping, it is so important and they are so thankful. How often do you deploy?
Personally, about once a year.
Okay.
I'm still a full-time federal employee, so I don't have control over my schedule as if I had been retired. And I'm sure once I retire, I will do more often. But, a lot of folks who are retired will do things, once a month, once a quarter, things like that. Again, I'll take annual leave and go down. I've been to Florida 2 times in the last 3 years, Port Charlotte, I believe. Last summer, not summer. Well, I guess, the summer before last summer. Last year, there was Hurricanes Milton and Helene, did a lot of damage in Florida and obviously you talk about North Carolina. So I spent a week there actually helping to organize the operation and did a couple of days of muck outs, which is when we go into a house and try to sort of recover the house, whether it's ripping out everything down to the studs or just depending upon the needs of that house. It might just be portions of that house, but they try to get them back to a point where they can recover and perhaps have, their insurance come in and rebuild and replace and probably save some of these homeowners thousands, if not tens of thousands of dollars.
Yeah.
And it is hard work. I'm very qualified for it because I can lift things and I can break things. I'm not a builder, never will be. But, we do not need skilled labor. We need people with attitude. One of our cultural principles is get shit done, if I can say that on the podcast. And that's what we that's what we grab people to do and have our volunteers do, is just go in there with a great attitude, get stuff done for that homeowner, give them a hug on the way out, and hopefully a day or 2 or 3 days later, they're in a much better place than they would have been. It's free of charge to the homeowner. And again, hopefully they've got insurance or their ability on their own to again, get the new drywall in or to replace the furniture or whatever it might be, where sometimes that house might have been, condemned, or the insurance people might have just said, no, we can't help.
Right.
And you're on your own. Yeah.
So do you find that corporations will give their employees time off to volunteer with Team Rubicon?
They do. I just had an interaction with the Ford Motor Company. They sponsored a documentary that just aired a few days ago, and I for some reason just cannot remember the name of the documentary. But it follows a gray shirt and his experience. leaving active duty and joining Team Rubicon and what he got from that. But like Ford, I can't recall the exact number, but they both encourage their employees to join Team Rubicon and give them time off.
Mm-hmm.
I think Home Depot, any number of organizations out there do similar things because we have a lot of corporate partners who donate either funding, equipment, or their people to also help out.
If I were to volunteer to deploy, is there a cost to me? Do I pay my own way somewhere? Do I have to buy my own meals?
No. Everything is provided for you.
Yeah.
We'll fly you to wherever it is. If you're local and you're driving, we'll reimburse you for the mileage. You'll be probably in a gym or something like that on a cot. But we have breakfast, lunch, and dinner provided. Sometimes we're cooking for ourselves. Sometimes we might be, like I was in Florida staying at the VFW, and the VFW might provide some meals. So everything is paid for.
Right.
We get you there. Obviously, you got to bring your own clothes and things like that. We'll do your laundry for you 9 times out of 10 if it's available. So, it's not any kind of out-of-pocket expense.
Great. Let's talk a little bit about who can volunteer. So I don't want our listeners to think that you're just looking for guys swinging chainsaws. You need help on multiple levels, whether it's a doctor to provide medical assistance, nurse, physician's assistant, all the way down to a guy swinging a sledgehammer or cutting something up with a chainsaw. You need comm guys. You need paperwork.
Yeah, we need planners.
Yeah, you need
logistics people.
Yeah. So is there a list on the webpage of what services or what things you're looking for, or is it just best that they reach out and say, here's my background, I want to help?
Yeah. I mean, as part of the application process, there are ways to sort of put in specialized skills that you have.
Right. Training.
Right. And as you mentioned, a lot of our time could be swinging, how would we say swinging a chainsaw, God forbid. I am chainsaw qualified. And from a kid from New York City, that's pretty darn good. We can get me chainsaw qualified. But, a lot of what we do is that sort of mucking and gutting in houses, but if you cannot do that, there are plenty of jobs for you.
Right.
So let's say before we come to your house, Larry, and you sort of raise your hand and say, hey, I need some assistance. We will send 2-person teams out there to do a site survey. They will walk around your house. They will talk to you. They will assess your needs, and they will report back to the folks who are running the operation to say, this is what we found. We have pictures. This is the needs. Is this within our capability to do? So at that point, people with those skills just need to be able to drive a truck, understand our mission and our capabilities, and be able to work with homeowners to understand what their needs are, and then bring that message back to the folks who are running the operation. There are plenty of things like that. Donation management. We have people who actually run the operation, planners, logisticians, operational people who sort of organize the mission. So there are plenty of jobs out there for people who want to swing something and break something, or do chainsaw operations, or do heavy equipment operations. And for a smaller subsection, the medical profession, because we have qualified teams. We have a team right now in Jamaica doing medical assistance. But again, you can if it's not your bag of goodies, there are plenty of things that involve swinging hammers and lifting heavy things that we can put you to work for.
Well, again, listeners, the webpage is Team Rubicon, Rubicon, USA.org. Go there, check it out. If you know somebody who may have just separated recently, they're banging around wondering what they're going to do, maybe they can spend some time volunteering. Maybe they don't want to get a job right away. They're moved in with a relative and they're looking for something to do. And, just send that link to people and spread the word. And also, while you're there, I guarantee you there's a button that says donate on it. And I want you to bang on that button and donate what you can. This isn't free, and you can't rely on other people to fund it. You need to donate. Every little bit helps, whether it's $5 or $50 or $5,000. Give what you can. Where do you see the organization going in, say, 5 years?
Good question on that one. It's interesting. There we have sort of core capabilities, as you can imagine. And we talked about, chainsaw operations and things like that. But there are a few initiatives that we're undertaking. I haven't been personally involved in them, but one of them is rebuild in the last couple of years. So we've had a couple of very specific operations, starting out in Houston in 2017, where we've actually been rebuilding homes and putting people into those homes. Done a couple hundred of those. There was just an academy started, and again, I can't recall the exact name, but it just started in September, where it's like a trades academy where we're taking folks who don't necessarily have some of those trade skills, spending about 2 months with them and teaching them how to rebuild and sort of getting them on that path. But I think one of the things that Team Rubicon has been challenged with, but is at its best at, is being flexible to an operating environment, whether that's being driven by climate change, whether that's being driven by something like COVID, where out of nowhere it wasn't necessarily in our skill set or in our strategic documents to say that, hey, we're going to suddenly start supporting mass vaccination efforts across the country, or when the U.S. pulled out of Afghanistan. We never would have thought before that we would both be helping with sort of welcoming them to the United States. And I spent 2.5 months every other weekend resettling those Afghans in Northern Virginia, working with other partners who would get donations of furniture and things like that. And we were the muscle because, again, my skill set is lifting things up and putting things down.
Yeah.
So we're moving couches and we're getting donations on a Friday, and Saturday, Sunday, moving folks in. So, it's difficult for me to project where the organization will be, but the organization is constantly looking for new challenges. We are semper gumby, always flexible. And, and I think one of the stories that came out of Enduring Eagle, which was the operation that dealt with Afghan resettlement, was there was some meeting with non-governmental organizations, and the State Department was talking about, what they could and couldn't do and what authorities they had, and sort of wondering, like, who could help. And I think the Team Rubicon representative literally said something like, what do you need and where do you need it? And that was enough to get us on the path that, we see a need, we'll step in, we'll fill that gap.
Wow. What does the Northern Virginia Metro Field Operations Coordinator do?
Any number of things. Actually, I've sort of taken over a few more roles than that, but I'll just sort of tell you how we organize ourselves locally. As you can imagine, like in the military has an administrative chain of command, an operational chain of command. Operational chain of command, is sort of run by the permanent staff and also in the operation itself. But when you're organizing yourself locally in terms of membership and what you're doing, we have volunteer leaders, of which I am one. So I'm sort of responsible for Northern Virginia. We don't have anybody sort of doing this in the district right now, so I'm sort of covering the district. So what that means is, I spend a lot of my time doing outreach to organizations that are looking for support, food banks. It could be this organization, your organization itself. I think we're here in 2022 doing one of those cleanups. But we probably in Northern Virginia and D.C. do at least 2 service projects a month with a local organization that needs help.
Oh.
And again, a lot of them are food insecurity related organizations, and or Habitat for Humanity, things of that nature.
Sure.
And we think that's really important to keep our gray shirts engaged and involved in that local community and give back to the community, because again, not all of us can just get down to Florida. So there's some of that. There's organizing training. We go to Camp Snyder, which is 2-3 miles away from here.
Yeah.
And we do our chainsaw both training and sort of hands-on practice with them. And it's sort of, it's a good deal for us because we're able to go over there and, it's a forest full of trees. Some of them are already down, so we practice, bucking and limbing those trees. We practice felling things, and the scout camp gets our services where they say, hey, we have a leaning tree over here. Can you clean up this area over there? So it's a good relationship. So it's.
I know another place where you could do that.
Back here. Yeah, I noticed, Anna. Yes.
Yeah.
Give us a call.
I will.
So yeah, it's that. So it's also dealing with the membership. I may be going to VFWs, things like that.
Oh, yeah.
And talking and doing some recruiting there. So it involves all those sorts of things, and just sort of care and upkeep of our gray shirts. People are always writing me, calling me, whatever. Hey, what's up with this? What's up with that? So there's a lot of sort of hand holding and doing that stuff.
Yeah. Wow. Well, listeners, again, it's Team Rubicon USA. visit that webpage, check out all the resources there. Think about volunteering, at least contact the local chapter, find out what they're all about. And it's not there's no huge commitment here. It's what time you have, what your capabilities are. They are not going to force you to do things that you're not capable of doing.
Correct.
So you really, I guarantee you, they can find something for you to do and a way for you to help, either using your skills, using your ability to think, just being there and helping out. I think it is good for everybody to do, really. Well, Evan, listen, I can't thank you enough for coming out, stopping by, and sitting down and telling our listeners all about Team Rubicon.
No, I appreciate the opportunity, Larry. I always love talking about Team Rubicon, and hope your listeners will check in and check us out.
Yeah, for sure. Well, listeners, we'll have another episode next Monday morning at 0500. If you have any questions or suggestions, you can reach us at podcast@willingwarriors.org. You can find us on all the major podcast platforms. We're on YouTube and Wreaths Across America Radio. Until then, thanks for listening.
The Welcome Home podcast is brought to you by Willing Warriors, a nonprofit organization serving active duty service members and veterans since 2012. To learn more, please visit our webpage at willingwarriors.org.